In my practice, I see people literally transform their health by changing the way they eat.
We need to start working on this
Quality of life.
Quality of life, seriously. You're gonna live over 50, for sure.
Yeah.
So how do you want to reach that age?
How do you want to feel?
Exactly.
The evidence shows we should be eating mostly plants, ideally all plants. And my patients that have done that, many of them have come off of medications, or at least lowered their medications, and had tremendous success. If you just eat a diversity of whole plant foods, you're gonna be eating a diet that has more nutrients than 99.9% of the way people are eating out there now.
Hi guys, I just had the most interesting and fun conversation with two of my friends who happen to be vegan medical doctors, Dr. Michelle McMacken and Dr. Mauricio Gonzalez. And we talked all about why the vegan diet is healthy, but also the scientific evidence to back that up. So I hope you enjoy it. Oh, but we also made lunch. We made these beautiful tacos inspired by the cuisine of the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico, because that's where Mauricio is from. And I will put the recipe for these tacos below, so check these out and enjoy the video. Hi guys, I'm here today with my friends, Dr. Mauricio Gonzalez and Dr. Michelle McMacken, and they're both vegan doctors here in New York City, so I'm super excited. So we have a lot to talk about. So you guys, tell me a little bit about this Food as Medicine event. We did it last weekend in New York City. How did you get started putting this together and your whole messaging around that?
Go ahead.
It's your fault.
It's totally my fault. You want me to start?
Yeah,
So,
your idea.
So thank you, Janae, for having us today.
welcome.
It's amazing to be here. So Michelle and I were very involved into the vegan movement, so to speak, right? Also, our main field is how to incorporate the vegan lifestyle into medicine.
Right.
And the reason we want to do that is because we have scientific evidence that shows that it might definitely improve the life of millions of people, especially people who are suffering chronic diseases. So we just got together. We were talking in a very informal way.
Yep.
And we basically came up with this idea of doing an event. We
Yeah.
call it a mini medical immersion.
Right.
So just have a day where we can introduce to the layperson the scientific basis of a vegan diet and what are the benefits of implementing this into their normal lifestyle. So we got very excited. We said, okay, let's do it. Let's not do it. Let's do it. We ended up doing it.
Yeah.
And we just finished our first event on January the 7th.
Which is amazing.
It was amazing. It was
So fun.
And you were part of it.
Yeah.
Part of it. It was an
You
honor.
and Isabel.
Yep.
And that's the story. And that's what we want to do, at least from
Right.
my
Yeah.
part.
And I would just add, I think that I'm sure you have the same experience. In my practice, I see people literally transform their health by changing the way they eat. And there's so much confusion out there about nutrition, and people hear one thing on the news and in the media, and they come with so much confusion and misunderstanding that being able to guide them in an evidence-based way and tell them, here's what the evidence shows. And the evidence shows we should be eating mostly plants, ideally all plants. And my patients that have done that many of them have come off of medications, or at least lowered their medications, and had tremendous success. So I think for both of us, it was a real joy to be able to share that more broadly.
So, well, speaking of the media and getting our information and being so confused often, there was the new U.S. World News and Reports diet thing that came out, ranking the best diets in the world, I guess. I don't know. But vegan diet was number 16 on the list for overall diets, though it was number 2 for diabetes diets. But the thing about that, like, I honestly, I didn't even want to read it because I get frustrated. But Max was like reading it to me, like, they said this. They gave all this evidence in support of the vegan diet, but yet they put it at number 16.
All right.
And so, for their reasoning was, one, they think it's too restrictive. It's too difficult for Americans to adopt this diet, which very, paternalistic. But also, there was a concern that if you're on a vegan diet, then you might not be getting enough calcium, D, B12, and I think, were those the main ones?
Calcium, vitamin D, B12, protein.
Protein, of course, is that.
Yeah.
Right.
I think it's really interesting. There's this sort of concept that, first of all, the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics just came out with this unbelievable position statement in December, saying that a quote-unquote well-planned vegan diet is appropriate for all stages of the life cycle.
Right.
Including pregnancy, breastfeeding, infancy, childhood, athletes, elderly. So boom.
Boom.
Okay, boom. But I think what's most ironic about this is the words well-planned.
Right.
Because is the average American or Western diet a well-planned diet?
No, absolutely not.
Right.
That's
a
so
very good
important.
point.
And is the average diet getting the majority or like
No.
any of the nutrients that we need, especially in this country? So it's really interesting that.
And there's this interesting emphasis on nutrients, when in reality the eating pattern that leads to our number one killer, heart disease, our number two killer, cancer, and all down the line, diabetes and all the chronic diseases that we have, is a Western style diet.
Exactly.
And so you may not be thinking about nutrients when you eat that diet, but it is leading to very, very significant diseases. They're just so common that we don't think about them. The hospitals are filled with people who are sick because of their eating habits. It's a Western diet.
Nutrition science is undergoing a tremendous transformation.
Right.
Actually, before going to med school, I did nutrition and human sciences as my major, and I remember that back then, it was not that long ago, but okay, let's say back then, everything, the emphasis was nutrients. Like, how are you gonna get this specific nutrient? How are you gonna get this specific nutrient? So we know that this is not necessarily true.
Right.
That's right.
And we know it now with hardcore science. And I'm gonna give you like a very, very brief example.
Okay.
We've done studies on newborns where we actually trace the amount of amino acids they get from the breast milk, and they're not enough. But for some reason, this beautiful baby is able to transform these amino acids in their blood, and they become complete.
Right.
I think there's a real danger to overemphasizing nutrients. And it's not that you shouldn't ever think about nutrients, but when you only think about nutrients to the exclusion of what is my overall eating pattern, you end up actually losing out. And ultimately we don't have complete control over nutrients no matter how much we want to plan it. So if you're worried about calcium, for instance, the calcium in one collared leaf might not be the same as the calcium in another collared leaf based on the conditions in which they were grown, the soil, and so forth. There's only so much control that we have. And we should really be eating with abundance
Yes.
and joy.
That is
Ideally.
so good. I love that.
Actually, the interesting thing about nutrients is it's a direct line for industry to sell their product.
Yes.
Which is
point.
probably why a lot of this nutrient way of thinking has taken off, because it's a vicious cycle. For example, you have a sliced cheese product wrapped in cellophane, those little individual slices, but people think on the front it says good source of calcium.
Good source of
So
protein.
it may be a quote-unquote good source of calcium. Sorry, I don't mean to pick on calcium, but maybe a good source of calcium, but is it good for you?
Exactly.
No.
Great
So
point.
don't just go for the nutrient, go for the big picture.
Right. Is it wholesome?
There's a great chapter. I don't know if you read this book, Salt, Sugar, and Fat.
Yes, Michael Moss.
Yes, Michael Moss. Amazing
He's
book.
really-
So he has this chapter where he talks about how Tang came to life.
Tang the
So
drink.
Tang the drink.
I remember
So
that.
Fascinating.
it was fascinating because there was a bunch of scientists working on this beverage that would actually resemble an orange.
Wow.
Like everything, potassium, magnesium, vitamin C. And at the end, the leader of that project was like, this is too difficult, this is too expensive. Let's just put vitamin C and let's add vitamin C.
Wow.
Let's make vitamin C like the poster child of tan.
Right.
And they did it, and oh
And then
boy, they did
Cha-ching.
it so right.
Instead of us just eating oranges.
So
That's
they
right.
What's so hard about that?
they
Yeah.
changed the industry. So
Right.
by emphasizing a single nutrient, they
Yeah.
get to sell more.
Don't you worry about Susie getting enough vitamin C? My Susie? Almost half the children in this country don't. But Tang has a full day's supply of vitamin C.
I will touch on one thing, sort of one of my pet peeve misunderstandings is around carbohydrates and carbs. Because one of my favorite things to do is to meet a patient who has type 2 diabetes or prediabetes, which is a state where a person is at high risk for getting type 2 diabetes. And telling them, you know what you should be eating? You should be eating more carbohydrate-rich foods. And they look at me like I am nutty. But really, this is what the evidence shows, and this is why U.S. News and World Report ranked a vegan diet so high for type 2 diabetes, because the evidence shows that the more carbs in your diet, the lower your risk of getting type 2 diabetes. But it makes a big difference what kind of carbs you're talking about.
So wholesome, unrefined, things like we've got lentils and
Exactly.
whole corn.
Stuff that
whole
looks
grains.
the way it grew in the ground, for the most part.
You recognize it. Exactly.
Right. So when you process a grain and you turn it into a very processed flour, that does become a problem, or when you add a lot of sugar to your diet. But when we talk about whole foods like whole fruits, lentils, beans, brown rice, oats, avocado, all of these foods are rich in carbohydrates, and they actually go a long way to prevent diabetes. It's the most important food category, along with reducing animal foods in the diet. Those two things together is a great recipe for preventing diabetes. It works every time I've ever tried it with a patient.
One of my heroes is actually Dr. Jenkins. And Dr. Jenkins is
Love that guy. I hope I can meet him sometime.
So everyone is like, Jenkins, he's the guy who invented the glycemic index.
Oh, really?
So he's done the best studies in the vegan world. He actually did this randomized clinical control trial showing that a vegetable portfolio, that means eating soy, almonds, oats, veggies and fruits,
Okra.
okra. Yeah.
Any okra fans out there? You don't have to eat okra if you don't like it, but it was part of that portfolio.
It was, yeah, exactly, because it's viscous
Eggplant,
fiber.
viscous
yeah,
fibers.
viscous fiber. That's his word. Reduce the amount of cholesterol pretty much the same rate as a normal cholesterol lowering drug does.
Oh, wow.
It was a statin, yeah.
Yeah.
It was on par with taking a typical cholesterol lowering drug at a typical dose.
Right. And it was published in one of the most renowned medical journals in the world. But the guy is super busy, right? So he doesn't get to teach people how to do this change. And he's very ethical. You should read his articles, his medical articles. At the very end, he always ends saying, like, we should question about the environment now. So nutrition does not pertain only to the human being.
Right.
So he's like a very, very...
It's all connected.
It's all
It's all connected.
So basically that's what I think Michelle and I are trying to do, fill in the gap. Like talking with science, but at the same time, make it simple so you can adopt this lifestyle in a very simple way. So let me talk to you about iodine. So iodine is a very tricky nutrient because, as Michelle said earlier, the level of iodine in New York City is not the same as Chicago. And it's definitely not the same as California because it relates to...
Nothing's the same as
Nothing is the same as California, actually. It's like a song. But
That's right.
so what happened is that they tested in 2011 a bunch of vegans. I think it was a study that tested 72 vegans and on the urine. And they saw that the iodine levels on the urine was slightly lower than normal. So then they got worried. They said, oh my God, can this be a deficiency? So iodine is very important for thyroid functioning, right? So what they did, Exactly, which controls the metabolism, so to speak. So they checked the thyroid of all these vegans, and their thyroids were beautiful, completely okay. You see, even though sometimes you see like a slightly lower level in your blood or in your urine, sometimes it doesn't relate to any health outcomes.
And it's again, not to discount that we need nutrients,
Right.
but the body has an amazingly beautiful way of adapting to differences in supply.
Right.
And that's obviously evolutionary, right? Like we had to
Exactly.
evolve that way. And so, for example, I think you cited in the Food as Medicine event, we talked about iron.
Iron.
Right? Iron's a great example of that because
Yes.
if you are low in iron, your body will absorb more iron. If you don't need more iron, then your body will absorb less from your food. So your body it's just a beautiful adaptation that we've developed. Here's the thing, when there's a difference between taking in a lot of nutrients, having a very nutrient-rich diet, and having an outlook where you focus only on nutrients. And that's the key difference, because if you are spending all your time focusing on how much iron, protein, calcium, vitamin D, iodine, vitamin C, vitamin K, magnesium, and all that you're getting, you're not gonna have a very disjointed diet, and you're at risk of actually, ironically, eating foods that are less healthy for you. Because you're gonna start looking at labels and picking out foods that potentially have those nutrients added in.
Right. Enriched.
And enriched, exactly, which is a funny word. And you're not gonna be eating foods that necessarily that are the healthiest foods on earth, which are plant foods. If you just follow a whole food, plant-based diet, meaning you're basing your diet in whole plant foods in their least processed form, you're actually gonna have the most nutrient-rich diet on earth. It's not to say that there aren't certain nutrients, quote unquote, of concern that you should have in your mind and plan it, have a little bit of planning. But for the most part, if you just eat a diversity of whole plant foods, you're gonna be eating a diet that has more nutrients than 99.9% of the way people are eating out there now.
Exactly.
And that's the beauty of it.
That is. And it tastes amazing.
Right.
Dr. Greger,
Yeah.
he has this video, I don't even remember what the topic of it is, but in the video what stood out to me was how there are all these studies about fruits and vegetables where the scientists can't exactly pinpoint why they're so good. Yeah, it's the synergy. Because they've got all these nutrients, but, like even there's a study with grape juice and how grape juice still, compared to just sugar, water, was so much more nutritious, but it didn't really have any nutrients. But at the same time, I think it was like the antioxidants, something in the body. But the synergy of plant foods in your system, things you can't even measure, not yet at least.
Right. And a big part of it is fiber. Right, which of course is only found in plant foods. Fiber's huge, and I think something like only 3% of people in the United States, for example, meet their fiber needs, and the fiber and the threshold is set very low.
Right.
It's
So,
25, 32 grams, something crazy.
But yet we focus on things like protein, which everybody's getting too much of, and it does us harm. So I think that the fiber is a big part of it, and it's also how it interacts with our gut flora.
Yeah, that's another big thing.
And it's not just the food that you eat, it's how it interacts with your entire system. And we've learned really cool things about what our gut flora can do for us.
One of my theories why a vegan diet is so important. Michelle and I are trained in hospitals. Hospitals are like the worst places to be. All you see is sickness, suffering. Okay, so you know. So here's the thing. Modern medicine will not let you die young.
Exactly.
Do you understand that?
Keeps you alive, the drugs and...
Do you understand? If you acknowledge that we will do everything in our power to keep you alive, then you might give a healthy, a vegan diet a chance. Why? Because you're going to live over 50, for sure.
Yeah.
So how do you want to reach that age?
How do you want to feel?
Exactly. So humans are experiencing a tremendous longevity now, unknown from previous times. So we need to start working on this
Quality of life
seriously. This is not something ambiguous, or this is not longer a joke. This is a real thing.
That's absolutely true, because the drugs and the procedures that we have largely treat symptoms.
Right.
In a few cases, they get to the root cause, but nothing gets to the root cause the way food does.
Exactly.
Exactly. That's beautiful.
So think it as a insurance, okay? And you have to take it
Insurance.
seriously.
You have to take it seriously. Well, I think that's a good place to wrap up. But, I mean, where can they find more information about you guys?
Food as Medicine,
Food as
nyc.com.
And I'll put
That's
put
right.
links below. I'll put the
Yeah.
link to foodasmedicinenyc.com. I'll put you guys' Instagram pages.
Yeah.
We'll also link the the studies that we talked about. We'll link the U.S. Food News and World Reports and
Academy of
everything.
Nutrition and Dietetics.
Exactly. And the doctor that you mentioned, the one who created the
Jenkins, David Jenkins.
Yeah.
Canadian.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Okay,
he's
send me all
awesome.
that. So we're gonna link all that, so you guys check it out. And if you guys, viewers, have any questions for me, for the doctors, leave them below, and we'll try to get to them.
And actually, I would say, if I can mention 2 book resources.
Yes.
So obviously, How Not to Die by Michael Greger is an amazing resource. It goes both by disease condition, that's the first half, and the second half is by food, and how food affects health outcomes. And you can look up almost anything there, and also on his website, nutritionfacts.org. And then I would put in a plug for Brenda Davis, RD, and her book that's called Becoming Vegan, a comprehensive edition. I'll always go for the comprehensive edition. And this is an amazing investment for anyone who is interested in transitioning to being vegan or has already been vegan even for 20 years. I mean, you can look up everything there. It's very evidence-based, and it goes through a lot of answers to a lot of these questions that I typically get asked.
Awesome. Cool. Thank you guys so much for being
pleasure.
here. This is
Thanks for
really
having
fun.
us.
We're gonna do it again.
Yes,
Yeah.
definitely.
We'll see you guys next time.
Bye.
Bye.